possibly. I mean, a 12-year-old kid could have could have used the gun, sure. Dragging a body about 10, 12 meters.
Wait, I thought the 74 murder was the one where she was just stabbed repeatedly, but no
97
actual
times.
excision was made.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, a 12-year-old.
And
Although
she was
I guess
outside?
Maybe. I mean,
I guess it's true. He could have had help. I mean, if he was raised by crazy uncles,
maybe
they could have been like, "All right, it's time for you. Let's go have this cathartic experience." And then it turns out he liked it.
It's your bat mitzvah.
Yeah, there you go. Coming of age, kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think he did it.
No.
Probably not. No.
Okay, so who's next up on the list
Well,
here?
let's see. Francesco Vinci.
Okay, so there's 3 Vincis or something like that. So which one is this?
This is Salvatore and Francesco were the 2 brothers,
right?
And then Antonio Vinci was Salvatore's son.
Okay.
And Antonio and they were, by the way, estranged. Salvatore and Antonio were.
There's a bunch of Vinci, so I just wanted to clear it up again because it's been a while since we talked about them.
That's a good point. Yeah. So Francesco, the 2 brothers, and then Francesco's nephew, Salvatore's son, Antonio. So Francesco, well, I mean, it does seem like he knew something, although, again, maybe, like you say, he was just speculating that he'd had time to think about it.
Yeah. 2
of the murders took place while he was in jail. So, I guess if you want to take the theory that there was more than one monster, more than one person doing it, perhaps Antonio was committing these murders just, while he was in jail as a way to exonerate him. As the police were saying.
It's a family tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although I'm not sure that I buy that, because if he was doing it to get him out of jail, then okay, so he kills the 2 German guys, and then he waits well over a year for the next killing.
Well, maybe he did. It doesn't sound like he really liked his brother that much.
Oh no, we're talking Antonio, and so Antonio, because remember,
the son.
Francesco was locked up.
The son, that's
and
right.
Antonio,
yeah. No, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know it's confusing. So one last time. So Salvatore's son was Antonio, and then Francesco was Antonio's uncle, and Francesco and Antonio had a very good relationship. They were good, close buddies, good friends.
And neither of them liked Salvatore.
Yeah, neither of them did. And so if you're going to take the idea that he committed these 2 murders, I don't think it's the case, because I don't think he would have waited as long as he did. He let his uncle sit in jail for quite a while, when he could have actually, one murder wasn't enough. Okay, I'll go murder somebody else again.
Okay, but to put the shoe on the other foot, you don't want to press it. You don't want. I mean, the cops are everywhere.
Uh-huh.
They're out there looking. You don't. It's kind of it's a dangerous game to be like, well, let's go do it again and try to get him out faster. Well, you got to be really, really careful. And he may have, if it was. So in this theory, what you're saying is, you're saying it's Antonio who's doing that to get
Francesco
out.
Yeah.
He was very, very, very cautious. He could have been out, once every month or 2, spotting and going, no, that guy lifts some weights. He will club me. I'm not going after, or no, those people, I don't like the look of them. I mean, there's a whole slew of reasons that he may have just taken his time.
Well, I could think of actually one reason that would spoil his kills. A lot of the times is he's there casing out these guys, and then some of the voyeurs show up with their cameras and crap.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we'll scratch
the peeping toms, yeah.
So that must have been a major impediment for him when those guys were hanging out there. At the same time, it's kind of amazing. This guy really was pretty good, that he was never spotted by any of these voyeurs who were hanging out there all over the place in those woods.
But what's funny is that I remember reading about the voyeurs is that they, not only did they have cameras and listening devices, but they had, weirdly, some of the latest technology in night vision goggles.
Yeah.
Well, let's back up. Let's say I'm wanting to kill somebody and I come across the voyeur and I'm like, you jerk, you just screwed this up. And you beat the crap out of the guy and you take his stuff. Uh-huh. He's not going to call the cops and say, some guys who were having sex in cars. So then he'd suddenly have things to use. So he might be like, oh, hey, these goggles are great. I mean, oh, nope. I see Peepin' Joe over there. Nope, definitely can't go on that one.
Yeah.
This night is a bust.
Yeah, if you're going to be
he's going for nights where it's dark, no moon, it's a limited time each month.
Yeah, and so there was just that small window of time, and there was always going to be these guys out there screwing things up. So yeah, Antonio bringing Francesco. No, I think that probably Francesco just wasn't the killer. Again, although we don't know for a fact that the monster was just one guy.
Yeah.
We don't know that. Could have been more than one.
Although...
Probably not.
I mean, that's a pretty specific mutilation, and it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it is.
And, I mean, I guess I just, in my brain, hope that, there's not more than one person in any given region.
Yeah, good. That's a good hope to have.
That is willing to do that. Mm-hmm. But I could be a wrong assumption, but it's my hope in this world.
Yeah. Most of us, I hope that most of us can't do stuff like that. I don't think I could.
Mostly, I just hope that if it was one of the Vincis, they came back and they were like, "Oh yeah, I just did this thing, and look at this thing that I got," and everyone was like, "Dude, no,
that is so wrong.
Yeah. What?
Do not do that again." Oh, well.
But in that story, right, we're saying that he came back. He was like, "Look at what I just did," and everyone was like, "Yeah, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
I could do that.
Good job.
No problem.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, maybe it was initiation, right?
That's some Texas Chainsaw Massacre crazy.
Yeah, it's like The Hills Have Eyes kind of
crazy.
I
was about to say that.
That's the one I meant. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's that kind of nuts. Yeah. I think these guys were not model citizens. I don't know if they were all that twisted and messed up.
So do we have a good suspect? I mean...
Well, there is one possibility. Because Salvatore, Salvatore is maybe, because he's
the other brother.
Yeah, Salvatore, Antonio's dad. He left the country. Well, he was in jail from early 1886 onward. He was under surveillance prior to that, but then he left in 1988. So that would account for, if he was the killer, that would account for why they stopped. Mm-hmm. So, which makes Salvatore. Although at the same time, he was being followed by the police quite a lot.
I can't imagine that they were all too subtle about that.
No, they weren't. He was aware he was being followed, generally at least. And so he knew he was being followed. So it would have been pretty ballsy on his part to go out and commit a murder. I mean, all the other ones, yeah, but the 1985 murder, that was when he was really, starting to come to their attention.
Can you remind me, what was the progression of Barbara's progression through the Vinci brothers? Was it Francesco first, or was it Salvatore?
It was Salvatore first.
Okay.
And then Francesco. And then not Antonio the nephew, but Antonio Lobianco, who was not related to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess I can see Stefano feeling really jilted, and then again doing that thing that we were kind of talking about with the Natalino, where he just never quite got over the slight. And, maybe because when he initially murdered Barbara, he was feeling like, I can't, the kid's right here. I care about this kid. I can't, take out all of my rage on her. And so he had that kind of weirdness in his brain, and that he was trying to work out. Again, that's...
This is
probably too cognizant of what, but I'm talking Salvatore. I mean,
Salvatore.
Yeah.
Oh, so you think he was feeling a little guilt over the?
Well, that he had more anger towards Barbara than he was able to express, because Natalino was there in the back seat.
Oh, I
and
see
so
what you're
he
saying.
cared about Natalino, and he took him to a safe place.
Which is why the first one didn't have any mutilation.
That's why the 86 one didn't have any mutilation, and then maybe he was able to or he was trying to suppress it, so that's why there was such a big gap between that one and then the 74 one, and then it just kind of ramps up. He does it once, and he's like, oh no, he's like so compelled to just keep working it out. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea.
I have no idea either. Yeah, I bet.
I'm not a criminal psychologist.
Yeah, I mean, he eventually either got over it, he went back to Sardinia and became a serial killer there. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, it could be.
It's totally possible.
Salvatore. So possible, but again, these guys were sneaky because they never really left much in the way of evidence. There's one last guy, and this guy is actually kind of the favorite of a lot of people, and that is Antonio Vinci.
Who we've talked at length about already.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit. Well, you'll remember police were suspicious of Francesco because he was close to the scene of 2 killings. And he was actually, at both those times, he was hanging out with Antonio. So that was, and in one case, Antonio lived a mere 6 kilometers from the murder site. So that's actually as much of a finger of guilt towards Antonio as to Francesco, just for that alone. He was talking to Mario Spezzi, the journalist, and Douglas Preston. They actually cornered him in his own kitchen. And he, at that time, acknowledged that he owned a scuba knife. Now, whether he was just tweaking them, I don't know, but a scuba knife. Because he was talking about how his bad relationship with his father, Salvatore, and he talked about how they got in this really big knockdown fight, and he had him down on the floor pinned, and he had a scuba knife, and I had my scuba knife to his throat.
Wow.
Yeah. And maybe he was just being taunting them about the case, because he had to have known that they thought he was maybe the killer. He was, according to what they talked to him, they found that he was extremely up on the case. He was very familiar with it. Although that's to be expected, even if he's not the killer. He's involved, whether he likes to be or not.
It pays to know the details of the case that you were suspected of being involved in.
Yeah. Another thing about Antonio is he'd be about the right age for it, and he actually moved away from Florence between the years 1975 and 1980. So that means that whole gap between the 74 killing and the 81 killing, well, that could sort of be accounted for by Francesco being out of town. So that would account for why had been no murders between the 74 murder and the 1981 murder. So that fits. And he acknowledged to Preston and Spezzi when he talked to them that he was with Francesco when Francesco hid the car in the woods way back in like 82. And that's about it. That's not a huge amount of evidence.
No, I mean, what my biggest problem so far with all of this is that, with the exception of Pietro, this is all focused on one family. Like, oh, well, we can't make it work with this guy. Let's try the other guy. Oh, it didn't work with him. Let's try it with the other relative. Like, this is so easy to me to, well, let's expand our scope of the investigation from this one family. And I know that they looked into a lot of people, but it is just so easy to have been somebody completely unrelated to this family. And that's I think that's what makes this case such a winner for people and so intriguing, and why it's been around so strong. But it's like, I don't know why the cops went about it in the way that they did in terms of the Vincis. Like, we've got to focus on the Vincis. Well, it's frustrating to me.
Yeah, well, after the connection was made to the Beretta handgun, I can understand why they would want to give them a good, thorough look-see. But
it feels like they went overboard.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing about it is it's always possible that the gun actually left their hands. I mean, they might have sold it.
Yeah, I was going to say,
they might have lost it. They could have been stolen from them. I mean, it's always possible that.
And if they are associating with ne'er-do-wells, it could very easily end up in the hand of yet another murder. I mean, we've seen these stories in the news before where somebody gets found with a gun on them, and they say, well, I bought that gun, and that gun is connected to murders via the ballistics. How'd you get it? Well, I bought it from the kid on the corner who I buy my Coke from. You know, I needed a gun, so I bought it from him. Turns out it was a gun that was used in a crime.
It happens.
And these things happen.
They do.
I mean, or the Vincis knew a bunch of kind of crappy people.
Well, they did, especially Francesco. He hung out with a lot of criminals and lowlifes.
And so, he says, I got to get rid of this gun.
It's hot.
I used it in a murder. The cops are onto me. It's got a really specific shot pattern, and some guy says, yeah, I'll buy it from you.
He probably didn't even say it was used in a murder. He probably just said, he had a friend who was looking for a gun.
He says, I got a good one.
Oh, I'll sell you this one.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Which is, Joe, why I don't buy guns from you.
Well, that's a smart reason.
Yeah.
And so it's entirely possible, that this, and I think that the crowd that committed the 68 murder, I believe that those guys probably were all involved.
Yeah, I would agree with
Yeah,
The family.
and it was a clan killing, but not necessarily all the later killings, not necessarily. But beyond that, who the hell knows?
Yeah, I struggle to believe that the entire thing was done by that entire family, because that is just such... There's a level of organization to it that I cannot see a fighting family being able to maintain, especially with some of the specificity that was done in terms of the attacks on the women and stuff like that.
Long term, no.
Yeah, long term. It's like if you're capable of doing that just for this, you probably are doing a whole bunch of other things, and you should have been found.
Yeah. So I think we can all agree that we don't like any of them.
Yeah. No, I mean, none of them. I mean, I think that Antonio definitely is possible. It's a possibility, but, as far as, would I send him to jail? Would I vote to send him away? No. Because,
it's not beyond a reasonable doubt.
No, the evidence really isn't there.
Yeah.
You never know. I mean, maybe someday the gun will turn up and we'll find out where it's been all these years, and we'll get a better idea of, maybe who really was the killer.
Yeah.
And
or it's in the bottom of a river.
Yeah, probably. There's always that possibility.
It's sleeping
too.
with the fishes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the monster. Unfortunately, we didn't quite solve this one or hang it on Choopy. Sorry, Choopy. He likes the notoriety.
He does.
Yeah, he does. He enjoys that stuff. Well, you guys got any more theories before we
No,
launch?
I think we've exhausted this one pretty well.
I think so. Hey, well, let me tell you guys a few fun facts you're really going to want to know. First off, you might want to, especially if you're the killer, please send us an email. And our email is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. And we also have one of those website thingies. That website is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. You can download and listen to our episodes right there. And also, we've got a link for merch there too, don't we?
Oh, yeah, on the website?
Yeah. So you can, there's a
survey is on there, the merch is on there, all of that stuff is
all
on the
kinds of good
right-hand
stuff.
panel.
Yeah, so you can buy mugs, t-shirts, all kinds of good stuff. What else? Other places you can find us would be on iTunes, where you can subscribe, you can rate us, preferably a 5-star rating. We like those better. And give us a review. That's great, too. And streaming, we can be streamed from everywhere. Google Play is a big one. I know there's a lot of others.
Anywhere you find good podcasts, that's where we're
Anywhere
at.
you get fine podcasts.
There you go. And social media, we're there too. We're on Facebook, where we have a group and a page. So join the group, like the page, or is it like the group, join the page? I can't remember.
Just joining the group, liking the page.
There you go. Okay, sorry for the confusion. We're on Twitter, where we are thinking sideways without that G, and we have days.
Conversations.
Stuff, okay.
And junk.
And junk, okay. Yeah, and that's about it. I already told you about the merch and stuff like that, so I think we're done for this week.
All right.
Yeah.
So until next week, ciao.
Arrivederci.
I don't know the language. Bye.
Bye, Ski. Thinking Sideways is not brought to you by giant headphone cans that make you look like a Cyberman from Doctor Who. No, instead, TSP is brought to you by Sleep Phones, the world's most comfortable headphones for sleeping, traveling, or just curling up to listen to a sad, scary little mysteries like ours this week from the London Underground. You'll find out about that soon enough. With Sleep Phones, you get super thin, high-quality audio speakers tucked inside a super comfy headband. They're soft and really comfortable to wear. I know, and Devin, you like them too, right?
Yeah, I love them.
The speakers are thin, the sound is really good, and they're just really neat. And if you got somebody sleeping or snoring right next to you while you're trying to tune into our podcast, well, the Sleep Phones will help cancel that out. By the way, there's something in it for you guys. Our listeners can save $5 off any Sleep Phones product at sleepphones.com just by entering the promo code SIDEWAYS at checkout. That's SIDEWAYS, and save yourself $5 when you pick up corded or wireless Sleep Phones at sleepphones.com.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't get it.
Uproot the aliens.
You must unlearn what you have learned. I don't know.
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey there, and welcome again to another episode of Thinking Sideways. I am Steve, as always, joined by...
Devin.
Joe.
And as usual, we've got another mystery for you. This week we're going to be talking about the Moorgate tube crash, which was suggested to us by Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, so thank you, Richard.
I gotta be honest with you, when you first put up, on our little spreadsheet that you were gonna do this, I was like, boy, that's a dumb thing.
Boring topic.
Super boring, dumb. Actually, turns out super interesting.
Yeah.
It is kind of
Way more interesting than originally anticipated.
Yeah.
So good job. Good job, Richard.
More controversial, too, than you would think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for folks who don't know, let's give a little bit of a primer here, as we always like to do. In 1975, the Moorgate tube crash happened, which was the crash of a passenger train in the London Underground.
It was coming in for a landing, pilot lost control. And
Not that at all.
Not like that? Oh, really?
No,
Oh,
it's a
okay.
train, not a plane.
Oh.
Wrong aim. For those of you not familiar with the London Underground, aka the Tube, it's London's rapid transit system, their rapid transit train system, which is both above and below ground.
It's commuter light rail.
Correct. Much like the New York subway.
It's a subway. Yeah.
People are familiar with the subway in America.
We probably don't need to spell it out in too graphic detail.
No.
Probably everybody
Although the
knows,
Tube
yeah.
is much older. It started in 1863.
It's almost as old as Boston's system.
Ah.
I'm kidding.
No, I was like,
yeah.
wait a second, because I know London started in 1904, not London, but New York. Although I remember it was weird at first. The London train, or the New York train, wasn't actually underground. It was just below grade partially. It was the weirdest train system in the world, but that's a completely different conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, New York has got like this phantom subway tunnel that's actually got a train in it and everything that's been sealed off for years.
Yeah?
Ever heard about that? We'll have to do an episode on it.
Yeah, this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
It's not ringing a bell at the moment.
Yeah, totally off the topic. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So the accident that we're talking about in 1975, it takes place on the Highbury branch, which, from what I can tell from the maps of the time, was a short north-south line that ran between two larger lines. And
Actually, it looks
hit
on the map
stations.
like it actually connects like 3 or maybe 4 lines.
Well, it has stations, so that's what
Yeah.
that's the thing about the Tube is when you read that map. I looked at it and realized there's 5 stops, but 2 of those stops are on different portions of the same line, and then one's on the north. But long story short, it was considered to be part of the North Line. It's no longer in service.
It's a stubby little line.
Yeah, it was. I'm not surprised that it's not in service because it was for passenger trains for the Tube because it was such a teeny tiny little line.
Well, it's not very efficient. If you connect those lines more directly, that means 2 train rides instead of 3 train rides for a lot of people. I can see where a lot of people would favor that.
I totally had the same thought. I saw where the benefit for the commuter was, but not for the operator of the rail line.
Just for history's sake, I looked it up. The Boston area was 1830-ish is when their underground railroad started.
All
Really?
right.
Yeah,
Huh.
Is that the one for slaves or the one for just commuters?
just for commuters.
Oh, that one. Okay. All right. Okay.
Nice.
Sorry.
Okay. To begin at the beginning of the story, on the day that things happened, the morning of February 28th, the train left from Drayton Park, which was the northernmost stop on that line, and it left that stop to make its 3rd loop of the day, that particular train set, and it left supposedly 30 seconds late. I see it always listed as having left at either 8:38 or 8:39 a.m. I'm not positive which, but I'm not going to split the 30 seconds to worry about it. At 8:46, the train was approaching its final destination, which was Moorgate, which was the final stop.
Oh, so super stubby. Like
Yes.
10 minutes.
Yeah, 10-minute
Okay.
line.
No, not
Okay.
even a 10-minute line. I mean,
Less
oh my
than
God,
a 10-minute
that's about
line,
an
and
8-minute line.
and it
Yeah.
includes stops.
Yeah,
Exactly.
5 stops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, super stubby line. So it's approaching its final destination, and the train should have been reducing its speed to come into the station, to come into that stop. And at most, it should have been traveling at 15 miles per hour, which translates to 24 kilometers per hour. But instead, it was going an estimated 30 to 40 miles per hour, which translates to 48 to 64 kilometers an hour. So it was flying through the station.
More than double.
More than double. It's maximum allowable speed.
I wonder what people on the platform were doing. I mean, I know that I'd be running for the exit, but I wonder if people just stood there. And,
It sounds like a bunch of people stood there and watched it because it happened so fast. I mean,
Yeah.
it just happened too quickly to have much time to react. And so what happens is that the tunnel for the train doesn't end at the end of the platform. It continued on another 66 feet, which is 20 meters. So there's 20 meters more of tunnel. And that tunnel had things in it that were meant to stop a runaway train. It
Obviously
had
not one going that speed.
Well, yeah, it wasn't meant for something this fast, but it had what's called a sand drag, and then it also had a hydraulic buffer. So sand drag literally is just sand piled on the rails, in this instance 2 feet deep, and then the ram, it's basically, you've seen this at the end of, on TV probably, the end of the line, there's a block or a metal frame with a ram or hydraulic arm that is meant to absorb the speed of the train horizontally to stop it without making a major crash. Well, two problems as we already identified. First off, the train was going way too fast and it blew through the drag. And the second problem was that the hydraulic buffer wasn't working. It was actually broken. So the only thing that probably helped slow the train down was colliding with the thing and ripping it out of the ground.
They probably should have stuck with the other kind of hydraulic buffer, which is just all those 55-gallon drums filled with water like they have in the freeways here in the States.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that can't break down too easy.
Yeah, no. So it was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it really tore through
Major
there,
crunch.
and obviously it hit the end of the tunnel, because the tunnel did end after that hydraulic ram. To make things worse, though, is that if you think about the tube, it's in a tunnel, and that tunnel is designed to only be a little bit wider all the way around than the trains themselves.
Yeah.
Which, if I remember right, I think the tunnel is supposed to be about 10 feet in diameter, and which is roughly 3 meters. It's a little less than 3 meters.
Okay.
Well, the problem was this particular piece of line was designed to actually haul cargo cars. So they had to be bigger. So it was actually 13 feet wide and 16 feet tall.
That's not great.
So the danger in that is that this train that comes blowing through and should have just hit the end of the tunnel and compressed entirely horizontally is now allowed to jump off of the tracks, hit the ceiling, hit the walls, ping pong all around, and bend in a whole bunch of places, and therefore collapse not only horizontally, but bend vertically. And it did. The lead car was bent in two places, so it was a total of three.
Kind of like an
individual
upside down
pieces.
V or something.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
more of a U almost.
Yeah.
It was really crazy the way the thing just. I mean, it was not designed to take that kind of impact, and it showed based on that tunnel.
Although actually having the slightly wider tunnel was beneficial because it allowed us, like rescue workers, to squeeze between the train and the tunnel and get forward.
That was
cut
the
people
only
out.
benefit.
That helped a little bit.
A little
Well,
bit.
I mean, standard tube widths they're small, right? So it's a tight fit, but they are designed to be able to vacate people through them. I mean, most of them are. I don't know about the London Underground. I haven't been in that one in a long time. But at least the ones like in Chicago and New York, like you have to have a way for passengers to exit the train and evacuate on either side. So there's,
Well,
it's not wide, but it's a couple
but-
feet.
But in this case, when the trains hit, they sort of like
Crumpled.
They crumpled,
They crumpled and
mushroomed
bent,
moved
left,
outwards.
right, up and
you know,
down. And so that's where the problem. If it was been in a properly sized tube,
if it had been a 10-foot tube, it would have sealed it shut probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Or close to it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. If you look at this particular train, and we'll talk about this later, is part of what's known as the 1938 stock. And most of the tube trains, they have a curved, domey roof to them. But then at some point, the sides of the car end up just running vertically up and down,
Right.
because you got to have that flat edge, and that's the space that would allow people to somewhat make their way through, though not easily. They could get their way through, as to what you're referring to, Dan.
Yeah.
So as I always say, not surprisingly, a massive emergency crew was assembled, a massive rescue operation.
What I want to know is, and you probably don't know this, but how big a boom and how far away was it heard?
I do not know that, to be honest with you.
That must have made a big kaboom.
It probably did, but I don't know how far it would have traveled, actually, because if you think about it, it's a lot of brick and concrete, but it's also in a tunnel system that has other trains making their own noise. And as you know, certain noises will help cancel each other out. So
I suppose.
I don't know. I have no idea.
And it was way underground too, but still, it must have been a big boom.
Yeah, it was a hell of a boom. But rescue workers, they show up, they find that the station is dark, it's smoky and dusty, and they had to work to get the people out. Now, what happens here is that the train goes into that extra bit of tunnel, but the last 3 cars are still at the platform. So the people in those cars, they can open the doors and they can get out.
Lucky them.
Lucky them. But for everybody in the front 3 cars, it wasn't as good. And the rescue workers had to go down that side of the tunnel, on the left and the right, as you were talking about, Devin. Mm-hmm. And they literally had to cut the cars open because the doors were just complete. I'm assuming that they were using saws and not torches when they were cutting these people out, but I don't know that for sure.
I think they might have used some torches.
They might have.
They really raised the temperature in there a lot.
They did, because the temperature, the fire brigade, I can't think of who it was, that one of the responders, I read a whole bunch of stuff on their site, but they talked about, they show up in full fire garb, and then they're quickly stripping down to basically just T-shirts and their pants, if they can, because the temperatures rose quite quickly to 90 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or converting that's 32 to 49 degrees Celsius. So it's freaking hot.
Yeah.
Because I just sort of engineer's mind, I was sort of thinking about the logistics of that situation. I'm thinking that now, I bet they have like some gigantic fans that they can bring in
I'm sure.
to flush out the
air.
They
wouldn't be
obviously
by that.
weren't prepared for something of this magnitude.
No.
They probably bought some gigantic fans to make sure this doesn't happen again, though. Mm-hmm. Because, oh my God, it must have been uncomfortable down there. Besides the heat, I mean, just imagine breathing all that smoke and dust and dead bodies.
I can't imagine that it was good. Now, as we said, they've got to cut these cars open because they've compressed and the doors are all squished shut and sealed. To give you a little bit of context, because I've said this a couple of times, everything was compressed shut. For context, each of the cars that went into that tunnel they were 52 feet long. That tunnel was 66 feet long. There was 2.5 cars crammed into that 66 feet of tunnel, which means take 2 pop cans and just empty pop cans and squeeze them down to the length of 1, and that'll give you a really good idea of how much damage that does.
Yeah.
It's pretty phenomenal.
Well, I wasn't on that train.
Yeah, me too.
Indeed. Luckily, I wasn't around. Not surprisingly, not everybody survived the accident. There were a total of 300 people on the train. Of those 300, 42 people died on the scene, and I see conflicting accounts that it's either 1 or 2 people died after the fact from the injuries that they sustained. A total of 74 additional people were treated for injuries that they got.
Yeah.
So that's over 100. It's over a third of the passengers.
Yeah, but somehow like 175, 180 people walked away with like minor injury.
Lucky
and so for a
them,
crash of this magnitude, that's pretty incredible.
The people in the first 2 cars
are
where the majority of the deaths
for
occurred.
sure.
So the people in the back couple of cars, they got tossed around, but they were in almost no damage of dying unless they fell the wrong way.
Crazy.
I wonder if there's a major trend after that for people to ride in the back, wanting to ride the tube.
I don't know. That's a good question. I have no idea.
I would.
I think it's in the first 18 hours, all of the injured passengers got off the train. The final body wasn't removed from the train, though, for 4 days total.
But do we know how long it took on average for them to remove the rest of the dead bodies?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't know how long it took to remove those other dead bodies, which I know where you're going for later stuff. We don't know how long.
I thought it was like they got